I was really shocked by two things I learned about the Texas power outage. One is that it cost more than Katrina, and two is that the whole Texas grid was actually 4 minutes and 37 seconds away from a complete grid collapse, one that would have almost taken a month to recover from. Now, I do want to caveat that I do not live in Texas. I did not live through this. I have friends that lived through this, but I don't have that personal firsthand experience. And from my perspective, I felt like I never got a clear answer on what happened. It felt like it got politicized right away, finger pointing, and now we've moved on. It's sort of like old news. And to me, this is this huge event. We should understand what happened. So as the data guy, my whole purpose is to make data more approachable. How can I tell you the narrative of what happened so you have a deep understanding of exactly what happened during that blackout? Because it cost 70 people's lives, cost more money than Katrina. 4.5 million people were without power. This is a big deal. So to understand this story, there's two things you need to know. The first is that the current, the electricity coming into your house, is alternating current. And that alternating current has a frequency, which is typically around 60 hertz. Now, if the frequency drops below this threshold, this red line, which is 59.4 hertz, it's actually causing damage to generators and motors that are on the grid. And so as a fail-safe, the power plants actually have breakers that will trip if it's below this threshold for more than 9 minutes. The second thing you need to know is that Texas is its own power grid. There is the Eastern Interconnect and the Western Interconnect, which is hard for Texas to pull from because it's not part of those grids. So it is its own entity. And that also means that it doesn't need to follow all federal regulations that have to do with interstate transmission of electricity. We're going to look at 4 different data points. 1, the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. 2, the demand in megawatts, the supply in megawatts. And then lastly, the price in US dollar. So we'll start with the temperature. It was cold. No other way to say it. It's typically in the 50s, and we're below freezing here in Texas. Now, on the demand side, people are using more power as it's getting colder. And I want to sort of highlight just how much. So we're starting at 40 gigawatts on the 10th. 59 gigawatts was the max load back in 2011 when there was the last outage. And we are at 72 gigawatts as of the evening or the morning of the 15th. Now, on the supply side, how much capacity, how much generation does Texas have? 108 gigawatts total, which is 100% capacity. And that is made up of mostly gas, so around 50% gas, 30% wind, coal, solar, nuclear. Now, on the 10th, we see the first decline in generation. Now, this line that extends all the way out for each of the different generation types is 100%. So that's if 100% capacity, that's where we'd see it. So wind, we see, has gone down to 61%, so almost a 40% decline on wind. But overall, we're still sitting okay, right? We're at 94 gigawatts, 87% total, or 80% total capacity. Now, let's move forward 2 days, and I think you can really start to see what's going on when you start looking at the price. Because on the 10th, we're at $30. On the 12th, we jumped to $300, so a 10x increase. And I want to get you a sense of what the 13th and 14th looked like, because we see this huge increase in price, just astronomical. So let me bring this back down so we can actually fit it all together, and we're at $7,000. Just this huge increase. And so the evening of the 15th is when things really start to go wrong. This is where we drop down to 67 gigawatts total. So we are at 62% capacity, and that is below what we need to be at 72. And so if we look at the components of this, we can see that the most precipitous decline happened in natural gas, where we're down to 67%. And that, gas is the main contributor here, right? But I want to note that it's not just natural gas, right? It's in addition to wind being down, coal being down, we're at 68% on coal. Solar is at 82%, and even one nuclear facility went offline, so we're at 74% for nuclear. Now, all of these in total essentially put us below the threshold. And so let's go to early morning of February 15th. It's 1:20 in the morning. And that's when ERCOT orders its first gigawatts worth of customers to be turned off. This has the impact of helping keep the frequency up higher. Anytime more power plants go offline, the frequency starts to go down. 20 minutes later, 3 more power plants go offline. They order another gigawatts worth of customers to be turned off. And that's when we see 2 more power plants go offline, and we are below the threshold. It's 1:50 in the morning. 1:51, they turn off 3 gigawatts worth of customers. Now, mind you, back in 2011, 4 gigawatts total was how many people they turned off. So this is not a small order. 4 stressful minutes go by, and they order 3.5 gigawatts worth of customers to be turned off. They are 4 minutes away from the whole grid going down. And luckily they do. They pass back up 30 seconds later, past that threshold. And that cycle continues of more power plants going offline. Then you need to turn more customers off. And if we look back at the map, this red section, this is that load shed. These are the customers turned off. These are the 4.5 million people that lost power. These accounted for the 70 deaths, the $200 billion worth of damage. It's all right there. And it's all because we couldn't meet demand. That's the simple answer. And I think when you look at the actual monetary value, what the price went to, it went to the peak. It went to $9,000. That's the cap. But still, that doesn't necessarily just make supply out of nothing. And so there's a lot of implications we can talk through on why or sort of what are the root causes on the economic side. But ultimately, that is the story of what happened in Texas during the winter storm and the root cause of all these outages.